everybody's going to push him higher than this. I know that. Consensus rankings will have him probably 8, 9 in that range. But for me, he sits here at 12.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and today we're giving you our rookie rankings post-NFL draft. So this is the list, the rankings you should be using for your upcoming rookie draft in your Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. Vaz, I know you've spent a lot of time on this, especially in a limited amount of time after the draft has just completed. So let's get right to it. We've got this all done in tiers as well, which I think is very important to note, because I think that is one thing that a lot of people overlook. It shouldn't just be a linear ranking system, right?
Right. So there's a few reasons for that. If you have guys separated into tiers, then you could feel like comfortable maybe addressing some team needs you have based on the tiers you've set up. And then like another point is like, say you never really want to be drafting at the top of your tier. So like say you come on the board and you're at the top of your tier. At that point, you could look to trade back if an offer comes that you like. So yeah, it's really important to have tiers and also to understand how the community ranks these guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get right into it then, starting with our first tier. You've got two names in this tier. Let's start off with Caleb Williams. By the way, this is for a 12-team SuperFlex non-tight end premium. This could be different in other formats, obviously, but Caleb Williams is your 101 in this format. Why?
Yeah, so my first tier is Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2. For this format, which is 12-team Superflex, I'll have Caleb Williams at 1. If you were to play in like a 10-team league, then I would have Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1. I think, unlike others, I value quarterbacks in 12-team leagues a little bit less than other people do. But I think Caleb Williams, I mean, he's a generational prospect, probably the best quarterback prospect we've seen since Trevor Lawrence. Possibly even as far as Andrew Luck, as far back as Andrew Luck. But we've never seen a QB this good go to a landing spot this phenomenal. Like he's going right away to a team that has, 3 elite receivers, a great tight end and a great running back, and improved O-line and a great defense. So, I mean, what more could you ask for? So I think everybody and their grandmother is going to have Caleb Williams at 1 in a 12-team league. But I will say that if you are set up at quarterback, like if you have Joe Burrow and Anthony Richardson as your quarterback 1 and 2, I think you can feel pretty good about taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1.
Okay, fair enough. So that is the first tier. Let's take a look at our second tier, which features Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, and Rome Odunze.
Okay, so again, I'll specify that when you're talking about this tier, where I've got Rome at 3, I've got Neighbors at 3, Jaden Daniels at 4, and Rome Odunze at 5. So when you have a tier like this, when I have a tier like this, especially for 12-team Superflex, I have Daniels sandwiched in between. And before the NFL draft, I had Daniels at 5. I had Neighbors and Rome ahead of him. But to be fair, I didn't love either of their landing spots. So, and I really do like the prospect that is Jaden Daniels, and he goes to the 2nd overall to the Washington Commanders. So I was wrestling with whether to put him at 3 or at 4, but I just decided at the last minute, I'm going to put Neighbors at 3 because he's a better prospect for me. And I've learned from my past experiences to stick with the talent when you're unsure. Because like, for example, I remember a few years ago when A.J. Brown went to the Titans and everybody was just pushing A.J. Brown down their rankings, despite the fact that they loved his talent because his landing spot was so terrible. You know what? Situations change so fast in the NFL. We don't know what the Giants will look like 2 years from now, but we know that Neighbors is amazing. We know that Rome is amazing. So I've already seen people saying they're going to take Worthy ahead of Rome. Don't make this mistake. Like chase the talent over the situation. I have no problem if you're sitting there at number 3 and you're not secure at quarterback and you don't have a good quarterback 2 or a good quarterback 1. Take Daniels at 3. I have no issues with that. Quarterback is the most important position in Superflex without question. So if you have a need at quarterback, take Daniels at 3 and be happy about that. But like without considering anything else, I'm gonna put Neighbors at 3 and Daniels at 4 and Roam slides to 5 just because I'm a little bit concerned year 1 he won't have the production because he does have such a crowded receiver room. But long term, I love Roam at 5.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's take a look at the next tier, which includes 2 quarterbacks, JJ McCarthy and Drake May. You've got McCarthy ahead of May.
I do. So yes, before the NFL draft, I had May ahead of McCarthy. And it wasn't because I love May's tape, this situation. I had May ahead of McCarthy because I was worried I was worried McCarthy would not get the draft capital. I thought there was a chance he might not get sufficient draft capital. And as it turned out, he got phenomenal draft capital. He got 10th overall draft capital to the premier landing spot. And I didn't love Drake May's tape. Okay. And I think JJ McCarthy's landing spot is just too good to ignore. So I did move JJ McCarthy ahead of Drake May. I have them both behind Neighbors and Rome because, you know what? Drafting quarterbacks is a risky proposition. 50% of quarterbacks in this tier fail. You know, they don't make it in the NFL. You have to be aware of that. So drafting quarterbacks is a risky proposition, but it is the most important position in fantasy football, in Superflex. So you eventually do have to take a chance. And I think at 6 and 7, you take a risk here. JJ McCarthy is set up for with an excellent opportunity, throwing to these amazing pass catchers. It'll be difficult for him to fail. So he is at 6. May, it's a little bit riskier in my mind. He's going to a situation that's a little bit more difficult. Like the team around him is not as good. I thought Justin Fields was a phenomenal prospect, but he went to a terrible location at a few years ago in the Chicago Bears. And look what's happened to him. Look what's happened to his dynasty value. So I'm a little bit more nervous taking Drake May. So I will have JJ McCarthy at 6.
Yeah, and I know I think a lot of people, a lot of experts and fantasy gurus, they still have May ahead of McCarthy. But I've got to agree that I've actually got May even lower on my cheat sheet simply because it's sort of understood that he's going to be resting for all of, if not most of, the first season. And anytime they do that with a quarterback, I know it's for their better good. And a lot of top quarterbacks have succeeded after that, like a Mahomes or others. But at the same time, I remember Mahomes after his first season. I got Saquon Barkley the next draft, and I was offered Mahomes and a first round and something else for Saquon Barkley because Mahomes hadn't played yet. He'd only played one game. You didn't know what he was, so his value didn't go up at all. On the other hand, I ended up taking Deshaun Watson in that trade with something else, a small piece on top of that. So in that same draft, Deshaun Watson, after his first season, skyrocketed in value, whereas Mahomes just kind of stayed the same, if even that. So anytime quarterbacks don't play that first season, it makes me nervous.
Yeah, I will say that I think most people that draft Drake May will not sell low on him. There are teams that will want to draft Drake May, maybe if they're a rebuilding squad, because he won't give them the production year 1. So maybe they could tank that this year and still get a high draft pick for next season. So there are some benefits to taking a quarterback like that. If you do draft Drake May, be aware that he might sit year 1, but don't shy away because you know what? For his long-term development, it might be the best thing for him.
Yeah,
He does have immense upside.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying that he's going to be a bust. I'm just saying I'm impatient personally. I don't like to wait. And I like, my picks to gain value immediately. Let's take a look at your next tier, which includes Brian Thomas Jr. at 8 and Brock Bowers at 9.
Mm-hmm. So this tier 8 and 9 is really close for me. Brian Thomas Jr. and Brock Bowers. I have Brian Thomas Jr. at 8, and I'm not comfortable with that ranking because I love Brock Bowers' talent. But I'm not going to ignore the landing spot completely. I don't like Brock Bowers' landing spot at all. And Brian Thomas Jr. got a pretty decent landing spot. So And I do like Brian Thomas Jr. Before the NFL draft, I had Brock Bowers at 7 and Brian Thomas Jr. at 9. So they're still very close. But I will say this for this specific tier, if I have to draft at 8, I will let my team needs be the decider. If I feel okay at receiver and I need a tight end, I will draft Brock Bowers. And if it's a tight end premium league, I will move Brock Bowers to 8 and Brian Thomas Jr. to 9. This is for a standard league, no tight end premium. I have Brian Thomas Jr. at 8.
Fair enough. I love Brian Thomas Jr. for the upcoming season and beyond with Jacksonville. Yeah. Your next tier has a whole bunch. I'll list them down and then you can talk about them. Bo Nix at 10, Ladd McConkey at 11, Xavier Worthy at 12, Jonathan Brooks at 13, and then Keon Coleman at 14. 5 guys in this tier.
Right. And it starts off with the quarterback in Bo Nix. Because you know what? Everybody needs quarterbacks. They're the most valued position in SuperFlex, and Bo Nix got excellent draft capital and, in my opinion, above average landing spot. So I think he's got a potential to succeed here. It is a risky proposition, but I think the guys behind him, the receivers that you just listed behind him, they aren't locks to be studs either. So I think it's okay to take a risk on quarterback, especially number 10. It's not a huge risk. Okay. If you need a quarterback at 10, or even if you want like a QB3 on your roster, it's okay to take Bo Nix here.
Okay.
And then at 11, I have
Ladd McConkey.
Ladd McConkey. So a big riser for me. I think before the NFL draft, I even had Worthy ahead of McConkey, but this has been a switch for me. And I'll get into the specifics of it, but basically the reason is the Chargers traded up for Ladd McConkey at the early second round. And I see him stepping into the wide receiver 1 role there immediately. They've got a very good quarterback in Justin Herbert, and Herbert needs a go-to guy. McConkey can be that guy. He gets open with ease. He does everything well. He's got good hands. He runs good routes. He's got phenomenal speed. He can be a slot receiver if he needs to be. I think that's probably where he starts off. Starts off in the slot, playing probably sometimes in the slot and sometimes out wide. But he will, I think, walk into the most targets immediately because that depth chart is pretty wide open. And Herbert needs that go-to guy. I know they want to run the ball, but listen, they're not going to be winning a lot of games, I don't think. They'll have to throw the ball in most of their games. And Justin Herbert will be looking to Ladd McConkey because he gets open easier than Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer do. So I think I like his prospects for earning a lot of targets year 1. And I'm a little bit worried about Xavier Worthy getting those same targets year 1.
Yeah,
so yeah, we should jump right into Xavier Worthy here at 12, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Xavier Worthy at 12 goes to a phenomenal landing spot in the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody's going to push him higher than this. I know that. Consensus rankings will have him probably 8, 9 in that range. But for me, he sits here at 12. And the reason is I am a little bit worried. Like, I know he's got potential to be great. I know that. He's got Mahomes throwing him the ball. Hollywood Brown is probably just there for 1 year. And, Andy Reid knows how to cook up plays for somebody that can hit the home run. I know everybody's going to see this as like a Tyreek Hill replacement. Can he be that? But you know what? His hands are not elite. He drops passes. I'm a little bit worried. I had him at 11 before the NFL draft, so I am high on him. He runs great routes. People give him a big cushion because of the speed. He could take the top off. So he's got a lot of potential to be great. But that being said, I just feel a little bit more secure in Ladd McConkey, and I'm a risk-adverse drafter. So I do have Ladd McConkey at 11 and Xavier Worthy at 12.
Okay. Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, I got Jonathan Brooks at 13, and I think this is also probably higher than consensus. But listen, he got phenomenal draft capital. High second round for a running back is phenomenal draft capital. And if he hits, he will be a top 5, top 8, something like that Dynasty running back if he looks good. The thing is, he's coming off a torn ACL. So people will push him down a little bit further than this because he's not going to give you that immediate production. You might even have to wait till 2025 to get this production. But when he steps on the field, he will be the feature back. He's 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's fast. He's athletic. He's quick twitched. He makes guys miss in the hole. He's a great running back. He's a great prospect. He got the elite draft capital. There's nobody on the depth chart. It's his depth chart. So when he eventually gets on the field, he will be a league winner at running back. And you know what? Everybody needs running backs. So I have him ahead of Keon Coleman for that reason.
Okay. And Coleman, as mentioned, rounding out the tier.
Yeah, so I have Coleman at 14, and I think this is a great pick at 14. If you're sitting there at pick 10, pick 11, and you wanna get the wide receiver one in Buffalo, move back a little bit, and you could get Coleman at 13 or 14 probably because you know what, like Coleman's not going to earn a ton of targets. He's not that guy, but he's going to have a ton of opportunity to score points. This is Josh Allen we're talking about. This is a great offense. They're going to put up a ton of points, and he's a red zone threat. He's a game breaker. He's got ability to win deep. But you know what? He's not going to get a lot of targets. So if you play in a PPR format, maybe be weary of taking him here, even though he gets that premier landing spot in Buffalo.
Okay. The one thing, and I like everyone in this tier as you have it. The one thing I want to ask you is I would have this tier significantly broken off from the tier before compared to the tier of guys after. How do you feel about like the line between this tier and the tier above with Brian Thomas Jr. and Brock Bowers as an example?
I think there's a clear tier break.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen in terms of the consensus rankings across Dynasty, like from other Dynasty owners and YouTubers, I've seen like a lot of people are mixing them together. Like I've seen Bowers fall down to 10, 11 in some people's rankings. They've pushed up Worthy quite high. They've pushed up McConkey. They've pushed up Coleman, and I've seen Brooks falling a little bit more than where I have him at. And I think that's because people are a little bit nervous of his ACL injury and they want the immediate production.
Sure. But I mean, I agree with everything that you've got here so far. But I actually, like I said, to me, that's a definitive break in the top 9. And then for me, like, yeah, 10 to 14 is a tier, but maybe not as definitive as the top 9. But anyways, let's move on to your next tier, which is only a single player. You've got the questionable one, Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, Michael Penix at 15. Listen, he got drafted 8th overall to a great landing spot. So when he eventually becomes a starting quarterback, which he will, you don't take a quarterback at 8 overall to not play them. He will eventually be the starting quarterback. So if you can get the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons at number 15, there is nothing wrong with that. You take him, especially if you're a rebuilding team. Like if you have the 202 or the 203, you're probably not competing this year. So this is a great pick for you. You have the time to wait. You draft him, and then a couple years, you hold on to him for a couple years, and you have the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons to play and for hopefully a long time. But the reason he is at 15 this low is because he's got, Kirk Cousins ahead of him on the depth chart. Kirk Cousins is going to play for the next 2 or 3 years, maybe even next 4 years. This draft pick made absolutely no sense to me when it happened. It still makes absolutely no sense to me. I think it was an owner pick. I don't think the coach or the GM made this pick. So I don't understand it. I don't like it, but I have to respect the 8th overall draft capital, and that's why I have him here at 15.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that he's going to start and he'll probably be good. But the important thing to note here is that if you are taking him here, note that you have to be willing to wait. And you have to understand that, like I said earlier, perhaps for 2, maybe even 3 years, you're not going to see any production out of this pick. You're not going to see any value gained out of this pick. So just note that when you make the pick. Your next tier is also a single player. It is Trey Benson at 16.
Yeah, and I'll touch on one more thing. If you're drafting a quarterback at 202 or 203, listen, oftentimes these players miss. High second round picks miss quite often, even at receiver or at running back. So like it's okay to take that upside quarterback play and wait on him. Like it's a fine play. Like I remember last year I was taking like Tajay Spears at this range. I was taking, anyways, running backs that did not hit, so just be okay to take Michael Penix there and wait on it. This is a quarterback whose value will remain steady over the next 2 years because he got that draft capital. Sorry, yes, Trey Benson at 16. I've got Trey Benson in his own tier at 16. For me, he got excellent draft capital and an excellent landing spot. The Arizona Cardinals are an ascending offense. This is going to be a good offense when he eventually earns that starting job. If he looks good when he sees the field, he will be the feature back next season. James Conner is still the guy. I think James Conner is still the guy to start the year, but I could imagine that Trey Benson starts earning more touches as the season rolls on. And then maybe even by playoff fantasy football playoff time, maybe Trey Benson is the feature back there. It's possible. So this could potentially be a league winner year one. But you know what? Even if he isn't, James Conner, he's in his contract year. I think this is a move for the future, and Trey Benson will likely be the featured back next season if he looks good. The reason he is at 16 is because early third round draft capital still is not a guarantee that he will be the featured back next year. If he doesn't look great, they could add a free agent or draft somebody else. It's possible. So it's not a lock that he's the featured back next year. It's just probable that he is. So for that reason, everybody needs running backs. Running backs are necessary if you want to win in fantasy football. For that reason, I have him here at 16.
Yeah, and of course, James Conner is also known to have his nicks and bruises and miss 4 to 5 games per season, especially at this point of his career. So, absolutely, you might get lucky with Benson and get some good weeks out of him. Let's look at your next tier. 3 players here: Xavier Legette at 17, Adonai Mitchell at 18, and Ricky Pearsall at 19.
Okay, so this tier, I think for me, it's a little bit risky. Okay, we're getting to the point where these receivers could be busts, in my opinion. I think most people will have this tier above Trey Benson, I would imagine. Because, Trey Benson got that third round draft capital, whereas these 3 receivers, Adonai Mitchell was a very good prospect. And then Pearsall and Legette both got round 1 draft capital. So I think most people will have these 3 ahead of Benson. But for me, Benson is above them, and I'll tell you why. So 17, I've got Legette, and I liked him pre-draft. I think I had him around 18 or 19 pre-draft. So I really like the talent. He's got the ability to be a wide receiver 1. He's got that body type. He's got that big frame. He's fast. He's athletic. He's got good hands. He doesn't run elite routes. So I'm a little bit worried that, the NFL will be just a bit too good for him. He was able to beat up on the college DBs, but I'm not sure he'll be able to do that on the NFL DBs and on the NFL schemes, I should say. But he's got the potential to be a wide receiver 1. But for me, it is a bit of a risky pick. And as I mentioned previously, I'm a little bit risk adverse. I think Benson is a more secure pick. So that's why he's at 16. And then Adonai Mitchell, I have sandwiched between the 2 guys, between the 2 first round draft picks. And the reason is pretty simple. I like him a lot. So he's a guy that I like. I like his tape. I loved his routes. He's got blazing speed. He can take the top off. I hate his landing spot. If he went to a different landing spot, he'd be higher than this. But he went to the Colts, who have an established wide receiver 1 in place, and they have a run-first offense. They have a quarterback who wants to run the ball. They have a running back who they want to give the ball to 30 times a game. So I'm not sure that AD is going to get a ton of target volume at all. So, but I do like the talent. And you know what? When I'm unsure, I do take talent over situation. And then I'm unsure about Ricky Pearsall. He was a guy I was not in love with pre-draft. I thought he was just like a jag, just another guy. He gets open pretty easily. He runs good routes and he separates. But I wasn't in love with him. I thought like he's a wide receiver 2. He's a slot guy. He'll earn slot duties. But you know what? He didn't go to a great situation either. He went to the 49ers, who've got 2 wide receivers in place, and I'm not really sure what's going on there. They didn't move either of the receivers in Ayuk or Debo, and they said they didn't even get offers on day 2. So I don't know what's going on with them. Maybe Ayuk and Debo will be there long term, and Pearsall will be, fighting for targets behind them and behind Kittle as well. So until the situation changes and until I see that Pearsall is more than what I thought, I have Adonai Mitchell above him.
Yeah,
Adonai Mitchell above him. Yeah.
With Pearsall, I guess, he'll have an opportunity perhaps in a couple of years when Deebo Samuel becomes a free agent again. And I think part of San Fran taking a wide receiver there was to put a little bit of pressure or give them maybe a little bit more leverage in their negotiations with Brandon Ayuk, because now that you have a guy in-house that you just got, you can kind of show them, hey, look, no, we're not willing to give you that much money. So maybe that's a little bit of leverage for them in negotiations as well. But also keep a watch. If you do like Pearsall and you're considering him, keep a watch on the transactions, because if there is a trade, then his value could go up a little bit higher. Let's take a look at your next tier. 4 guys that are all wide receivers. Jermaine Burton went to Cincinnati. Jalen Polk went to the Patriots. Troy Franklin went to the Broncos. And Roman Wilson with the Steelers.
Okay, so I've got 4 guys on this tier, starting off with Jermaine Burton, who, if you've watched our previous videos, you know I love. This is a guy that I loved his tape. I was worried about the draft capital, so I had him at 24 in my original rankings, and he's moved up to 20 because he got sufficient draft capital, and in my opinion, he got a great landing spot. I think he'll have to be patient. I don't know if he'll earn a lot of targets year one, but T's gone after this year. I fully expect T to be gone after this year, and I think he's capable. With how good I think he is, I think he's capable of stepping into T's role immediately starting next season. That being said, he's a 3rd-round pick, so it's possible that they draft somebody in round 1 or 2 next year. Things change quickly in the NFL. So, and then there's some character concerns. So just be a little bit nervous about that. But you know what? I love the guy. I loved his tape. He's very fast. He's very athletic. He runs good routes. He separates. He's got yak ability. So for all those reasons, I have him at the top of this tier.
Okay. And then Jalen Polk to the Patriots.
Okay. So I think most people will probably have Polk. I would imagine like 99% of people will have Polk ahead of Burton. I have Burton ahead of Polk, which is kind of odd for me. Normally, I really value draft capital, and Jalen Polk got amazing draft capital at 205. But you know what? I didn't love his landing spot in the Patriots. It's okay. They've got Drake May now, and they've got a wide open depth chart. So he's probably expected to be the wide receiver 1 immediately. But I just don't see wide receiver 1 ability when I watch his tape. I know a lot of people are high on him, but I'm just not one of those people. In watching his tape, I saw someone who had difficulty separating. He wasn't overly fast. He didn't run a great 40 time. And I saw him running with, I saw him beating DBs with speed in college. And I just don't know if he's going to be able to do that in the pros. So I didn't love the pick at 205. And I have him in this tier because of the great draft capital, but I still like Jermaine Burton above him.
Okay. Yeah. I think both of those guys I see as the guys that probably will be more productive next year than this year, but certainly both with high potential. What about Troy Franklin, who joins his quarterback in Denver?
Yeah, so Troy Franklin, the surprise slide of the draft. I had moved him way down my rankings. In my first installment, I had him at like number 10 or something absurdly high. And then I had moved him down to about 17 when I started hearing rumors of his draft slide. And then I rewatched his tape and saw there were some questionable things. So I had moved him down, and thank God I had. But Trey Franklin slid all the way to the 2nd pick of round 4, and I thought there was no landing spot that could save him. But as it turned out, he got probably the best possible landing spot in the 4th round. And I moved him up to 22 because you know what? I do like his tape. I do like his tape like more than Polk's, for example. And he had immense college production. Okay, like he does separate. He does separate. He knows how. He's got some savvy to his routes. He knows how to gain separation. He's fast. He's quick. So I see the potential to be like an alpha receiver. It's possible. And he got that phenomenal landing spot. So I do have him at 22, and I will be very happy to take him at 22. I think at the end of the 2nd round, you're more willing to take kind of home run swings. And I think Troy Franklin is, even though he was a 4th round pick, he's a home run swing. He's got potential. He's got more potential in my mind than Jalen Polk.
Do you think he gets a little bit of a bump up because he's playing with this college quarterback, like Jamar Chase and Burrow, and, you've got a relationship and you can go to him in the locker room and say, hey, come on, just like old times, let's do it. You think he gets more targets because of things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Without question. And then you know what? The other receiver, the main receiver there is Cortland Sutton, who he's not a fast receiver. He's only a perimeter receiver, and I think they can throw Troy Franklin in the slot or on the outside, and they can feed him routes, and they know. And you know what? Bo Nix knows what routes Troy Franklin knows how to run, and he will get him the ball when he's separating on those routes. So yeah, I think having that relationship definitely is something that you could be excited about.
Okay, and last guy in this tier is Roman Wilson, a good landing spot with the Steelers.
Oh yeah, for sure. So Roman Wilson is a guy who I wasn't particularly high on. I think I had him in like the around this range actually before the NFL draft. I think around 19 or 20. Saw somebody who is definitely a slot receiver. You're probably going to win slot duties, and he separates with speed, and he's got good yak ability. But I was a little bit unsure if it would translate. But you know what? He went to the Steelers, and Steelers have an amazing track record of drafting receivers, and I think. They envision him probably fitting right into that Deontay Johnson role. So I think it's very possible that year one, he could walk into the most targets on that team. So I think at this stage, he's a phenomenal pick because I think he's going to earn targets. He's going to get open. They've got a good like Russell Wilson can still he's playing for his he's playing for his NFL life here. So he's going to find the guys that are open. And you know what? Wilson gets open. So I love Wilson here at the end of this tier.
Okay. And the next tier is just a single player. It is running back Blake Corum, who you have ranked 24th, selected to the Rams.
Yeah, so here, Blake Corum, I've got in his own tier, and I think I did this to separate the receivers mainly.
Okay.
I've got the four receivers above him, and they are firmly above him in my mind. Blake Corum is just a backup running back. He's just like an elite handcuff, not a backup. He's an elite handcuff. And I think more than anything, this pick, what it did was it kind of like it lowered the value a little bit of Kyren Williams. Because it's possible now that like Blake Corum will spell Kyren a little bit. They'll keep Kyren, they'll keep Kyren legs fresh a little bit more. But I still think like Kyren Williams showed enough last year that he's the primary bell cow back there. He's definitely the 1A. And I don't think Blake Corum is the 1B. I think Blake Corum is the firm 2. But that being said, you know what? Handcuff running backs are valuable, and this is the end of the second round or the top of the third round. It's okay to grab these elite handcuff running backs here, and that's what Blake Corum is. He got third round draft capital. He got strong draft capital. He's got a similar like size, similar build to Kyren Williams as well. So they're interchangeable. Like if Kyren Williams does get hurt, Blake Corum could be a league winner. He's one of those guys I like to target. One of those guys that could take on the entire role if the guy in front of him goes down. So I do like taking Blake Corum here, especially with the draft capital landing spot.
Yeah, and Rams running backs have had a history of getting injured, and of course McVay does love running the ball.
Now I can't do it for you. The inches we need are everywhere around us. What are you gonna do? Like! Subscribe! Subscribe!
All right, so our next tier, you have two players, Jalen Wright, the running back Miami took in the 4th round, and then Ben Sinnott, a tight end, who went to Washington in the 2nd round with the 21st pick.
Yes, so I have Jalen Wright here at 25, a player that I really liked pre-draft. He was my 3rd overall running back, so I'm pretty happy to take him here at 25. And in my opinion, he went to a decent landing spot in the Miami Dolphins. They have a great running game. They have a great offense, explosive team, and that's what Jalen Wright is. He's explosive. He's fast. He runs sub 4.4, and I can see why the Dolphins wanted him. That's how they've built everybody on their team. They have a track team, right? And Jalen Wright fits right in. When I saw Jalen Wright's tape, I saw somebody who, runs really well to the outside, catches the ball well, makes guys miss. He's explosive. A lot like Devon Achane. So this is like the troubling thing for me. It's like you've got these two guys, these two home run hitters, and Achane and Wright. And then, you've got Mostert, who you use in the red zone and to run through the middle. So I don't know that Wright is the guy they needed to like fill Mostert's shoes next year, So I think it's possible that they add another running back down the road who can do more of the heavy lifting. So it's going to be a tricky situation. He got 4th round draft capital, which really doesn't mean anything. It's very replaceable. So I'm not going to move him up because I don't think he can be counted on to get a lot of touches out of that backfield.
Yeah, certainly is a bit of a gamble, especially because of the crowded backfield. But at the same time, if you get some injuries there and he's counted on to do some heavy lifting, then that could definitely be a league winner. Let's talk about Ben Sinnott a bit in Washington, taking over for Ertz eventually.
Right. So Ben Sinnott's a guy that kind of came out of the blue. I didn't expect him to go in round 2. I thought maybe round 4 is what I was projecting, but you can't ignore that draft capital. Tight ends that go in the middle of round 2 have a really high hit rate, and he's got the size and the athleticism that you're looking for in a tight end. He runs sub 4.7. He's 250 pounds at 6'4". He's like an inline tight end. He blocks pretty well, and he's decent in the passing game, in my opinion. He doesn't run the greatest routes, but he's athletic enough to hit all 3 levels. And for me, he's here after Wright and the second tight end off the board, I should say, because of the draft capital and because of the landing spot as well. I expect starting next year he'll be the feature tight end there.
Okay, and then another tier, we've got Malachi Corley. Jets took him first pick of the 3rd round. Marshawn Lloyd, running back for the Green Bay Packers, a 3rd round selection for them as well.
Yeah, so I've got Corley here at 26. Is that right? 26, 27?
27. 27 for Corley and 28 for Lloyd. Yeah.
Okay, so Corley is a guy that I didn't love his tape. I saw like a running back that plays receiver. He's a gadget guy, and I don't really like drafting gadget guys because you never feel comfortable starting a guy like that. But you know what? He got pretty decent draft capital, and I expect him to get the slot duties right off the bat. Yeah, he's their best slot receiver, and even though I know that Aaron Rodgers doesn't like targeting rookies and it might be a slow start to him, I think he's athletic, and I think what he does well, he does great. He's good in the screen game. He's good at the quick routes, getting the ball in his hand and letting him run after the catch. So I could see him having a good NFL career. And you know what? At pick 27, it's worth the risk. And he's got good draft capital and a good landing spot. So I'm okay taking him here.
Sounded like you were describing Kadarius Toney in a lot of the things that you were saying. Let's talk about sure. Let's talk about Marshawn Lloyd.
Okay, Marshawn Lloyd goes to the Pack. Terrible landing spot, but good draft capital. You're getting a guy drafted in like the end of round 3. Kind of reminds me of like maybe like an Alexander Madison going to the Vikings back in the day. Similar situation, but I liked this guy. I saw him as like a powerful runner, like a 1B. I saw him as a 1B in my pre-draft analysis. And I think the landing spot isn't great. He's not the 1B. He's the 2. And they have AJ Dillon there as well. So I don't know what to expect. I think this year could be a rough year for him, but I think starting next year, he'll be like a handcuff running back, a guy that you want if the guy in front of him goes down, he could be a league winner. So I like taking those kind of backs in the 3rd round because they have got league winning upside. You just stash them on your bench and you hope for the best.
All right. Well, when you talk about a powerful runner named Marshawn, I like the sound of that. Let's talk about your next year. You've got running back Ray Davis, who went to Buffalo in the 4th. Javon Baker, wide receiver, went to the Patriots in the 4th. And then Jalen McMillan, who was a wide receiver, went to Tampa Bay in the 3rd. And the final quarterback in your rankings, Spencer Rattler, the only 5th round pick that you've got in your entire ranking system. He was a 5th round quarterback to the New Orleans Saints.
Okay, so we're starting off with
Ray Davis.
Okay, so Buffalo Bills draft Ray Davis in the 4th round. Decent draft capital for Ray Davis, higher than I expected him to go. But you know what? His tape is decent. He runs tough. I think he's a great pick for the Bills. They need that type of runner, and I think he's going to be like the main red zone guy. So he'll have some fantasy upside. I'm not going to say I think he's going to be the red zone guy, but he's got the potential to be the red zone guy. And I think in a Bills offense that sees the red zone frequently, that's a decent role to have. I think James Cook is definitely the main back there, but if they want to use a committee, because James Cook, he's not an every down guy. So if they want to use sort of a committee, Davis has got a lot of upside here in Buffalo, and I think you could do worse than drafting Ray Davis at this spot in drafts. If you want to elevate him a bit because you like is more than I do, then go ahead because the landing spot is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely can't complain about being a running back for the Bills. Let's talk about Javon Baker, wide receiver with the Patriots, 4th round pick.
Yeah, so a guy I really liked his tape. I really like Javon Baker's tape. He was a big riser on Mock Draft Database. But he rose a lot, but he did go a bit later than I anticipated. I thought he might be a third round NFL draft pick, and it turned out he was a fourth round pick. But that being said, I liked his tape. He separates easily. He's got good speed, good athleticism. He runs good routes. So he's got great hands. So I think that depth chart is wide open. I prefer him. I preferred his tape to Jalen Polks, who was drafted 2 rounds earlier. So this is a little bit of like a pick based on tape. I like this guy, and I'm willing to take a chance here in round 3 on a guy's tape that I liked.
All right. And then Jalen McMillan was a third-round pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have a aging wide receiver room.
That's correct. But you know what? They just paid that wide receiver room in Mike Evans, So that's a pretty established wide receiver room right now. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, So it's going to be a tough time for him to draw targets in that receiver room. And you know what? Trey Palmer, who also like flashed last year as well. He's no slouch. So I think for me, McMillan steps into the number 4 role there. So that's why, even though he's a third round pick, he got strong draft capital. I don't think the landing spot is very good. And, it's tough to crack that lineup. So for me, he slides down a little bit, even though I do like the talent. I think it's a really tough depth chart to overcome. So he does slide in behind those guys I mentioned earlier.
All right. And as mentioned, Spencer Rattler, the only guy in all of your rankings that was a 5th round pick. Everyone was 4th round or better, but you're willing to take a chance on him. He was widely seen as the 7th best quarterback, the top 6 being much better than him and everyone else being considerably worse than him. He was kind of seen as a tier of his own.
Yeah, well, you know what? Like, he plays quarterback, and he went to a pretty decent landing spot. Derek Carr, we don't really know what he's going to do. It's possible that he's terrible next season, and they give Spencer Rattler a shot. Like, maybe they like the way Spencer Rattler looks in camp, and they've had enough of Derek Carr. It's very possible. So I think if you want to take a shot at quarterback, like let's say you only have 2 guys on your roster, and you're worried about your number 3 quarterback situation, or if you only have 1 quarterback on your roster and you want to take a shot here on Spencer Rattler, I think it's worth the shot. I think it's worth the risk. Third round picks in fantasy drafts have a high bust rate, so it's okay if you miss on Spencer Rattler. But that being said, I'm not a huge Spencer Rattler fan, but I think the landing spot was great. And 5th round capital, it's not good, but it's not terrible. You could do worse. So I think if you want to take a chance on a quarterback, go ahead and select him here.
Yeah, certainly if you're going to take any quarterback other than the big 6, he would be the guy to go after. He's kind of seen as a low ceiling guy, I think, for the most part. But at the same time, any time you have an opportunity to get on the field as a quarterback, you never know what can happen. And you have 1 tier left. The last 4 guys in the bottom of your 3rd round would be tight end Jatavian Sanders, who was a 4th round pick for Carolina. Wide receiver Devontae Walker went to Baltimore in the 4th, also a 4th round pick. Running back Bucky Irving with Tampa Bay, and a wide receiver Luke McCaffrey was at the very end of the 3rd round to the Washington Commanders. Let's start with Sanders, who was originally your 2nd best tight end in your rankings, but based on draft capital, you've dropped him down now to pick 33.
Yeah. So I like Jatavian Sanders here. I think if you play in a tight end premium league, you could even probably elevate him a little bit higher than 33. But he went the first pick of round 4, so he got decent draft capital. And you know what? He went to a very good landing spot where he's probably expected to top that depth chart immediately. And you know what he does well, he does great. He runs good screens. He's powerful. He has got some yak ability. So it's kind of exactly what Bryce Young needs. He needs somebody that can catch the ball right off the bat. And then get yards after catch. That's what they want Bryce Young. They want the ball out of Bryce Young's hands fast, right? And I think that's what Jatavian does well. So I like the pick for this specific team. I think it's a great landing spot. So I like it here at 33.
Okay. And then Devontae Walker, wide receiver for Baltimore at pick 413. No problem. Walker was your 34th pick.
Yeah, so Tez Walker is a guy I liked as well. I had him a little bit higher than this pre-NFL draft, but he went 4th round to the Ravens, so he fell a little bit for me. I think he's got great athleticism. He doesn't run the cleanest of routes. He doesn't separate with ease, but he wins with speed and he's got strong hands. He can win contested catches. And you know what? If he's competing with Rashad Bateman for that number 2 spot on the depth chart, it's possible that he wins that role. I'm not sure that he will. I don't expect him to, but it's possible. So I like the landing spot. I think he's got some opportunity. So I have him here, and I'm happy to take him here.
What do you say? What do you say? What do you say? You little brat? You have never thanked me. I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe.
Let's talk about Bucky Irving, running back, taken 4th round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is your prospect number 35.
Yeah, so Bucky Irving, gets very good draft capital, and that's why he's here for me. He goes in the 4th round to the Bucs, who've got pretty much nobody behind Rachaad White, but he's not really the type of running back I chase because he is undersized at 190 pounds. I don't think he can carry the load if something happened to Rachaad White. But you know what? He got good draft capital in the 4th round. I expect him to be used to spell Rachaad White, so he is here for me at pick 35.
Okay. And your Mr. Irrelevant in the 3rd round for you is Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. He was actually taken with the 37th pick of the 3rd round as you're getting into compensatory picks, but he is your Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, so he's a big riser for me. I had him in the 4th round, in the middle of the 4th round before the NFL draft, but he gets great draft capital. He's probably expected to slot in at the number 3 receiver spot on the depth chart. And you can't argue with 3rd round draft capital. And you know what? He's got the genes as well. So Luke McCaffrey, I have him here. I didn't love the tape. I thought he was a very raw prospect. So I think it's going to take time, but you know what? He flashed some ability. And I think the Commanders drafted him based on that raw ability. So I think, if Dawson doesn't work out, then maybe a couple years down the road, then McCaffrey could step into the number 2 role there. So I think this is more of a pick for the future. So just be aware if you're drafting McCaffrey, production probably doesn't come right away.
All right. That is 3 rounds of 12-team SuperFlex rookie picks that we have ranked for you. I did want to just mention a couple of guys that didn't make your list. Of note, Will Shipley was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in the 4th round as a running back. Also, running back Isaac Guerendo was on some sleeper lists here and there. He was also taken at the end of the 4th round by the San Francisco 49ers. How close were guys like that or anyone else to making your list?
These guys would probably be next up. I will say I'm not a big Will Shipley fan. I didn't like his tape at all. And then I hated the landing spot. I expect he's like number 3 on the depth chart out of the gate. So he's going to slip a little bit further. I do like Guerendo, though. It's an interesting spot, especially to the 49ers. I think that Eli Mitchell probably is replaceable. I think like Eli Mitchell will be the number 2 back this season, but I could expect Guerendo to start off like, returning kicks this year and then maybe slot into the number 2 role next season. So I like Guerendo as probably an early 4th round pick. And then, other running backs were taken around this range too. That would probably slot in pretty soon after my top 36.
Yeah, Braylon Allen was taken with the 34th pick in the 4th round as an example as well. All right, well, there you have it. That's the cheat sheet. All you got to do is just follow this list, plug and play with your rookie draft in your Dynasty League. If you want to see the entire list, what I'll do is I will post this in our Facebook group. Okay, so I'm going to leave the Facebook group, a link to our Facebook group in the descriptions below. So click on that. That'll lead you there, and you'll find this list of players so you can just kind of look at it a little more easily. And remember that we are also going to continue to have different lists and analysis and strategy talk for the upcoming fantasy football season. So subscribe to the channel, stay up to date with all the content that we put out as we try to help you to win your fantasy football leagues as well. Vaz, any final words in terms of your list or anything else for the upcoming fantasy season or rookie drafts?
The only thing I'd like to say is that if you do disagree with my rankings, I'd love to hear about it. So let me know in the comments below.
Absolutely. Leave your comments, like the video as well. And other than that, join us next time for another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks.